Jeff Passan covers baseball for ESPN. Jeff, how you doing?
Good Monday morning, Buster Olney. I'm doing great.
There's a lot to get to today.
There is.
Yeah,
It's
yesterday I
I
did.
have noticed this feels like a much busier May than usual. Maybe it's prisoner of the moment stuff, but there's a lot going on in baseball right now. And we haven't even gotten to trade season yet.
Man, you're right about that. I was texting my son yesterday, he said, how you doing? And I'm like, told him because I'm in Yankee Stadium and you had the rain out on Friday. So you get the doubleheader on Sunday and we're not sure if we're going to be part of baseball tonight or, when we're going to break away. There were just so many moving parts and all the phone calls around the situation with Tim Anderson and Josh Donaldson. Just so many moving parts. And it wasn't until I got home late at night or like, oh yeah, I want to see who won all these games today to catch up. So I felt the same way. Like, okay, I'm drinking out of a fire hose. I would expect a decision. Josh Donaldson on his discipline will come down today. And I don't think there's any question he's going to be disciplined in some form or fashion. What are we looking for?
Well, you said it on SportsCenter earlier today, Buster. Rob Manfred has a decision to make. And that decision is this going to be a veritable slap on the wrist, a cursory fine, 1 or 2 games, or is he going to try and send a message and go 3 to 5 games, maybe even more than that? And I don't think it's a particularly difficult decision. I think 5 years ago, in a different social climate, it's easy. He gets a game and he moves on. But I think with all the time, energy, and effort Major League Baseball has ostensibly tried to spend showing that it can be a progressive thinking sport, and having Black Lives Matter on the field in 2020 on that opening day and doing the things that they do. And more than anything, trying to change its reputation as a sport that is not inviting to Black players. I think Josh Donaldson in this situation with what he said is probably going to wear a more significant suspension than we would have seen in years past. And in all likelihood, he is going to appeal it. And if he appeals it because of precedent, there's a chance that it gets knocked down. But that to me is why a longer suspension is likelier here. If Rob Manfred gets to send the message that Major League Baseball really cares about this, and then an arbitrator knocks it down, well, at least the message was attempted to be sent.
And I got to say that one of the things I think Rob should think about is what Tim Anderson experienced Saturday into Sunday.
Yes.
This happens on the field, and you could see his anger brewing during the course of the game on Saturday. And because of what Josh Donaldson said after the game, Tim Anderson is answering questions surrounded by reporters. Talking about, the history that he and Josh Donaldson had, what Josh Donaldson had said, starting back in 2019. He sits out the first game of the doubleheader yesterday. And what I heard from folks with the White Sox was he was really bummed. Like Tim Anderson was really down. And during the course of the game on Sunday night, I don't know if you noticed this, I did. A couple of times during the game, the cameras were focused on him during the dugout as our group was talking about what had happened on Saturday. And Tim Anderson was waving the camera and like, can you put it on the field? I don't want to be in the center of this, right? And then after the game, SportsCenter wanted to talk to Tim, but he knew what the conversation was going to be about. And he gave a shake of the head and grabbed his bat and walked downstairs. And instead, they talked to Michael Kopech. I remember talking with our colleague Claire Smith about this, and she related some incidents that happened with her. She's African-American as a reporter in the 1980s and 90s. And she told me, I was just sick of it. Why do I have to deal with this? And I think that's something that Rob needs to think about.
I think beyond that, when you go to the stadium a day after something happens like this, a day after you're feeling not just down, but almost singled out in a sport where you already feel singled out. And then the crowd starts chanting Jackie at you the way that some of the people did on Sunday at Yankee Stadium. I thought that was abhorrent. And I thought it was looking at the situation. They're not going to, because we're dealing with sports fans here, and we're dealing with a particular segment of sports fans in New York that can be absolutely unrelenting. I wish Tim Anderson had gotten a round of applause. I wish there had been some sort of support in place for him to say, not only are you accepted in this sport, but we want young boys and young girls who share your skin color to feel safe playing it and to feel included and to feel a part of it, as opposed to somebody who's an other. And that was the miracle of Jackie Robinson, that he was considered by the sport an other, and he became a fundamental part of the fabric of the game. The idea that, 75 years later, Tim Anderson is feeling excluded, not just because of the words of a fellow player, but because of the actions of fans involved in the wake of this whole thing, makes it just a sad tale, and something that frankly reflects incredibly poorly on the sport of baseball.
Very well put. I was utterly shocked that yesterday Josh Donaldson didn't hold some sort of a press conference at 1 o'clock, 2 hours before the doubleheader started, to meet with reporters and say, you know what, guys, since I talked to you yesterday, I've spoken with a couple teammates, and I know there were conversations with teammates. And Josh, basically come out and say, I've thought more about it. I've heard what I've absorbed what I've heard from other players. They've talked to me about their experiences. They've talked about the layers to this that I hadn't thought about. You know what? I blew it. I completely screwed up, and I'm terribly sorry. I want to talk to Tim, or something along those lines. I was shocked that there wasn't some sort of mea culpa from Josh yesterday. How about you?
Just wonder why.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. And I don't know if you've figured this out too as you've gotten older, but I've realized the easiest thing you can do is apologize. I know it feels hard to apologize sometimes, even if you think you're right, even if you think what you did wasn't wrong. But if people are telling you what you did was wrong, then what you did was probably wrong. And saying I'm sorry to someone, no matter how you feel about him or her, it's vital. Josh Donaldson needs to understand that even if his intent was not ill, and the questions about that, I think, are reasonable, because why do you take somebody's name like Jackie Robinson and use it in what charitably could be seen as a smarmy fashion, and what reasonably could be seen as something with more ill intent? But let's take him for his word here. Let's give him the benefit of the doubt, even if he doesn't deserve it, and say that he was just doing it in a joking fashion. Sometimes people do things in a joking fashion, and it's not a joke. And afterward, if you have hurt the person's feelings, if you have harmed your relationship, you do everything you can to go out and repair that. And step one in this situation is self-flagellation, public acknowledgement that I screwed up, that I did wrong to Tim, I did wrong to the Black community, I did wrong to the Chicago White Sox, I did wrong to the game of Major League Baseball, which I acknowledge struggles with these sorts of things because of a terrible history and a present that simply is not where it should be. Josh Donaldson can be a very well-spoken person. I think could have come out and really done a service to Tim Anderson and to the game of baseball by saying something. And you know what? Still has the opportunity to do so. I'm always of the better late than never thinking, but in this situation, I think it was a missed opportunity, and hope that he rectifies it sooner than later.
I had players say to me who were at Yankee Stadium on Saturday that they feel like there's a part of Josh who understood that he'd screwed up, because when you see his Yasmani Grandal get in his face at home plate, Was there a brawl right away? Was he swinging? He said nothing. He did nothing. He stood there and basically just took what Grandal was saying and walked away. And in the eyes of other players, they're like, you know what? He knew that he probably went too far. Just acknowledge it, say it, move forward. I agree with you 100% in what you said about that. Today, the hearing for Trevor Bauer on his 324 game suspension will go before, it starts to go before an arbitrator. What do we look for here?
I think this is going to be a pretty drawn out process, Buster, because it is so soon. We have to remember getting an arbitrator on the schedule is not necessarily an easy thing to do. So there's a chance this thing is done piecemeal, where you have a day here with a hearing, a day there with a hearing, but there's going to be a lot of evidence introduced. And Alvin Gonzalez has a really good piece at ESPN.com, sort of laying out what the arbitration and grievance process looks like. And what it is there is one neutrally selected arbitrator who can be fired at any time by Major League Baseball or the Players Association, who's going to rule on this. And the ruling is going to take one of three shapes. It could be vacated, which means it's completely gone and Trevor Bauer is eligible to play right now. The likelihood of that, it's infinitesimal. Like, that's just not going to happen. It could be upheld, which means Trevor Bauer spends the 324 games in suspension and his Dodgers contract runs out. Or it could be reduced, which I think is probably the likeliest of the scenarios, just because of precedent. When you look at a suspension as enormous as this one, typically huge suspensions find some kind of reduction. I don't know if it's going to be by a half season. I don't know if it's going to be by a full season. Major League Baseball believes that it has a mountain of evidence against Trevor Bauer that goes well beyond the original accusations that came from the woman in San Diego, and includes multiple women. Trevor Bauer believes that this is a shut and closed case in which he is being punished for his sexual preferences. And it's fascinating the completely divergent arguments that are going to be made here to see what side the arbitrator comes down on.
Over the weekend, the number one prospect in baseball was promoted to the big leagues, and here's what it sounded like.
What you're doing is plenty. Don't go out there and do anything more than you have to. We're not looking for a hero. Be Adley Rutschman. Because the regular Adley Rutschman is plenty, right? You get what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Especially when you're going to Camden Yards and you're going to play in the big leagues for the first time. Right?
Pretty cool scene, Jeff.
Really cool scene. I love these videos, by the way. I'm such a sucker for call-up videos. They almost remind me of it's like when a kid gets a scholarship and goes and tells his mom, hey, I'm going to school, and they catch it. I don't know. It just tugs at the heartstrings. And Adley, well, look, the heartstrings should have been tugged at like a month and a half ago. Adley Rutschman probably could have, if not for a triceps injury, broken camp with the Orioles on opening day. And as cool as that video was, did you see the standing ovation he got before he squatted behind the plate? And how, no, he did this was my favorite Adley Rutschman moment of the weekend. So in the game in which he triples in his big league debut, he's out there, and in catcher, I feel like is a different position than anywhere else on the diamond, because he's standing there close to the backstop, and fans start cheering before he's getting ready to squat and catch his first pitch, and his mask is still off, and he does a pirouette, like a full 360. He did what we always tell our kids to do. He took in the moment. He did what we so often fail to do. He looked around and tried to take a mental snapshot of one of the most incredible things he's ever going to get to do. And I appreciated that so much from him, like maturity beyond his years, trying to soak in this great thing that he's worked so hard for.
That was, I think, the best moment of baseball over the weekend. One of the tougher moments actually involved a Yankees reliever, Chad Green. Gets the news that he needs Tommy John surgery and he's out for the year. We're probably not going to see him toward the end of 2023. And it's interesting, Jeff, because I think part of the reason why the Yankees are where they are, why to this point they've been the best team in baseball, is because of how unbelievable that bullpen is. We talked on air last night about how going into play on Sunday, the Yankees had the second lowest bullpen ERA in all of baseball. And yet that whole group is right now is in a state of flux. Chad Green is out for the year. Aroldis Chapman is a mess. Gave up a home run to AJ Pollock yesterday. It's his fifth straight outing in which he's allowed at least one run. I think it's pretty clear his job as closer is in jeopardy. Luis Gil is one of their best pitching prospects. Guy's had a few tastes in the big leagues. He needs Tommy John surgery. He's out for the year. And Jonathan Loaisiga, who was so dominant last year, he's a mess. His confidence is down. You could see that in game 2 of the doubleheader against the White Sox yesterday. So one of the best parts of any team in baseball is a mess.
Let's say this, and let's just get this out of the way first. The Yankees are where they are because their rotation has been spectacular and has made every start. Like, the Yankees have played 41 games this season. They have gotten 40 starts from Garrett Cole, Jameson Taillon, Nestor Cortes, Luis Severino, and Jordan Montgomery. And the highest ERA in that group is Jordan Montgomery at 3.35. It's not like these are unsustainable either, because if you look at the fielding independent pitching numbers for all of them, they're all below 3.7. Like, this is a rotation that is so much better than I know I was expecting. And just because the injury history with Taillon and Severino and Montgomery, you figured one of them was going to break down. And Yankees fans, hold on, I have a wooden desk. Not jinxing you, not trying to blow up your spot here. You're off to a great start. The bullpen's interesting because as names have been phased out, and Aroldis Chapman might be getting phased out, and Chad Green's ulnar collateral ligament phased him out, we've had new names, Buster, come in and take those mantles, right? If Clay Holmes takes over as closer for the New York Yankees, is there a single Yankee fan out there who's going to say, this isn't what I want? No. Everyone would love to see Clay Holmes pitching the 9th inning. Michael King's been spectacular in this swing role that he's in. Wandy Peralta, a guy who, like Nestor Cortes, has been sort of a middling stuff lefty who's never found his foothold, is suddenly the Yankees' best bullpen option. Clark Schmidt, highly touted prospect for a long time, finally seems to be finding his role in the Yankees bullpen. And then, oh, by the way, one of the things that the Yankees have that behooves them really well, I think, is a deep farm system. Farm system depth matters in 2 areas. The first one is that if you have a bunch of guys who are, on the cusp of the big leagues or, sort of like middle grade prospects, 1 or 2 of them are going to stick. Right? Like, you're going to have the more options you have, the more opportunity you have for success. And that dovetails with the second part of this. The more guys that other teams have to choose from in late June and early and late July during trade season, the likelier the Yankees are to be in the mix for relievers that they can go out and trade for. So I think if Aaron Boone can patch together a reasonable bullpen over the next month or so, Brian Cashman's going to be in a position to really help him out at the trade deadline. And the Yankees, who have gotten off to just a stunning start, even with the sweep Sunday against the White Sox, they're going to be all right. As long as, and I say this again, one more time, as long as they stay healthy, which they've done an incredible job of so far this season.
so far this year, in your eyes, who's been the best player in baseball? Aaron Judge,
Okay.
Manny Machado, or other?
Manny Machado. I don't think it's particularly close. He's leading Major League Baseball in wins above replacement. He's leading Major League Baseball in batting average. And I know everyone, like, you can come to me and tell me batting average doesn't. No, batting average matters. I'm sorry. Maybe this is like the 80s child in me looking at stats that were important to me growing up. But batting average matters because you get on base getting a hit as well. You drive in runs, getting hits, and the all-around player that Manny Machado is. It's not just the 374 average, the 446 on base, the 619 slug. He plays Gold Glove third base, and he's a very, very smart and savvy base runner too. So to me, it's Manny Machado to this point and everyone else. Up there with Judge, I'd throw in Mike Trout. The offensive numbers from Trout are better, 50 points higher on base. And he plays center field as opposed to right field. No disrespect to Aaron Judge, who's been phenomenal this year and whose contract drive here is reminiscent almost of his teammate, Garrett Cole, who went out and turned in one of the best pitching performances of a pending free agent all time. Aaron Judge is in an even different situation, though, because he turned down $213.5 million. With the thing about Judge turning down the money, for me, Buster, was how much upside does he have? Normally, the contracts you see guys turn down are in those, first, second, third year before you hit arbitration, maybe as a 1+, occasionally, or as a 3+, occasionally as a 4+. You don't see many contract offers of that magnitude made to guys who are 5+s in the system where at 6 years you reach free agency. You saw it with Aaron Hicks. You saw it with Charlie Blackmon. You saw it with Xander Bogaerts. Those contracts aren't very common, though. I don't know that we see $200+ million contracts for 5+ players signed particularly often. But in Aaron Judge's case, the question was, how much more can he make? The answer, as Kylie McDaniel wrote on ESPN.com a couple days ago, is if he keeps this up and stays healthy, plenty.
You gave a hint as to what your answer to the next question is going to be. I agree with you about Machado for sure. I mean, he's been the best player in baseball. At the time he signed with the Padres, I remember writing a column saying this was a terrible mistake. And mostly the reason why I felt that at that time was because of the Padres' history with their payroll. The idea of giving $300 million to a player for small market team, you thought going forward, they're going to have a financial crunch. The big question at that time was, will Peter Seidler, the owner, be willing to spend money, far beyond where the Padres had spent before? But also to that point, Manny Machado had been a really good player. He was known as being the best defender. I remember talking to Brooks Robinson about his defense at third base, and he was talking about how great that was. But offensively, he hadn't been great to that point. And I think that's what surprised me the most is his growth as a player. And also you hear stories about his growth as a leader. He has clearly embraced that. We've talked about Bryce Harper on this podcast about how he has embraced everything about being the face of the Philadelphia Phillies. It seems like Manny Machado's done the same thing in San Diego.
I think Manny Machado had a choice. Either you grow up, or this reputation that has saddled you for way too long ends up sinking you. And I don't know that Manny Machado's talent ever was going to be sunk by this, but there's a way to live your baseball life that includes growing up and turning into something that you might not have been when you were in your 20s, which, Buster, sounds a lot like life and sounds a lot like the same decision that people have to make in the real world, right? And Manny Machado understanding that and recognizing that and seeing his place as a leader on the San Diego Padres. Fernando Tatis, for all of his brilliant talent and all of the wonderful things that he can do on the baseball field, is not that guy yet. And when you're given $340 million in your early 20s, and you have to go out there and perform. Having a steady hand alongside you to help guide you and make the right decisions and act in the right way is a pretty important thing. And we see Fernando Tatis Jr. has missed the first month and a half, 2 months of the season, and it probably isn't going to be back until at earliest the end of June, because he made a dumb decision, went out and rode his motorcycle and broke his wrist. And this is not to say Manny Machado is going to be the crotch rocket police from now on, but I think Manny Machado has gotten in Tatis's ear about, hey, kid, you have a chance to be one of the best players in baseball history. You are certainly among the most talented. Don't screw it up. Look at where I am right now, because I've taken good care of my body, because I've continued to work, because this is important to me. And I think Manny Machado's numbers right now might be, as much as they're inspiring Tatis because the team is winning without him, it's almost like Tatis looks at himself as the face of this franchise, even if he's not the leader in the clubhouse. And Manny Machado is suddenly taking away a little bit of market share there. And I think Tatis is going to come back and look at this and frankly be inspired by the whole thing. And we'll see just how much better the San Diego Padres can get, Buster, because they've been pretty darn good so far. They are more than holding their own in a very, very difficult National League West division.
Yeah, it'll be a nice, healthy internal competition between
Sure.
those two guys after he comes back. All right, sir. Thanks, Jeff.
Pleasure's mine, Buster. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.